Hello. Today we're going to talk about buyer contingencies, and when you're under contract as a buyer, how are the ways that you're protected in the state contracts? So the first and biggest contingency that we have is our inspection contingency. So typically we write our offers contingent upon the buyer's satisfactory inspection of the property. And inspections can mean lots of things. They can be looking at the school district. They can be, looking at the block behind and, discovering that there's a hoarder behind you. So those are contingencies, as well as the home inspection itself, which may reveal information about the property that make you not want to go forward with the purchase. And so in the state of Washington, you have 10 calendar days. In the state of Oregon, you have 10 business days typically. However, when the market is hot and you are writing competitive offers against other buyers, then you may need to shorten your inspection period. The next contingency that's really common is title contingency. So this means that the deed to the property is free and clear and unencumbered from liens, loans, or judgments. So a good example of something that comes up from time to time that wouldn't be straightforward would be like what they call a UCC judgment, which would basically mean you might have had a contractor replace your roof and you didn't pay them, and so then they file a lien against the property, meaning that they'll get paid at the sale. Almost all houses have a mortgage, and so that's a very common encumbrance that's paid at closing and is removed at that point, and it'll be on your preliminary title report. So when you get under contract, the escrow companies will send you like a history of the property and delineate things that are issues like loans, etc., things that are clouding the deed. And so they'll be working on that during the transaction to remove any and all of those things. But you want to make sure that it's unencumbered. The other really big thing about the title contingency is things like recorded easements. So a really good example is I had a property years ago that was built in the early 1900s. And back then, the landscape looked very different. And so the neighbor next door had an easement across the backyard of this property to access a garage that no longer existed. However, that easement still exists. And so by law, that neighbor will always have legal access to go across that person's backyard, even though it's completely fenced and landscaped, etc. They could say, hey, I have this easement, I'm gonna start using it, even though that garage doesn't exist anymore. So we need to understand what those encumbrances are in terms of easements, and utility easements are very common. So like when there's power poles or sewer lines in the back, there's always recorded easements for the utilities to have the right to enter your property to go and maintain those. It's very common. That's not usually a big deal because, it's not sustained use. But if we have a neighbor that wants to have use of it, like we need to understand that because it can devalue your property. So those are the other things that we look at when we're looking at the title contingency, and based on that information, we can terminate the deal and you can get your earnest money back as a buyer. Another contingency is your financing contingency. So if you're getting a loan, there's built-in contract language that indicates that if you lose your job and your financing is no longer viable, meaning you no longer qualify for your loan, that your earnest money is not in jeopardy. And so that follows through typically till the end of the transaction. Although in the state of Washington, you can delineate a shorter amount of time. I think it's typically 21 days for that financing contingency. Outside of that, you can build in other contingencies depending on the situation. Like there are neighborhood review contingencies. If you're looking at raw land, you can build in feasibility studies. So those are typically 30 days that you have the opportunity to find out if you were able to build what you want to build on a property. And if you're not, then you're able to terminate and get your earnest money back. And so you need to understand like how you get out of a contract, and if it's different than just a regular resale property, what are the other ways that you can get out of the deal if it doesn't work for you? That's it for contingencies right now. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out and let us be your real estate resource.